Imagine for a moment that your life is like a chessboard. Every move you make today determines the position you'll be in tomorrow. Some are born with strong pieces already in place. Others start from scratch with just a couple of pawns in play. But there's one thing no one can take away from you: the ability to move. Money, freedom, and prosperity don't appear by chance. They are built on tough choices, decisions that hurt in the short term, but that open up a different future. Today, I want to tell you the story of Clara, a woman who once felt trapped in debt, low-paying jobs, and the frustration of seeing no way out. However, she made 4 unbreakable commitments, and those commitments lifted her out of scarcity and led her to experience abundance. As you listen, ask yourself, what commitment are you willing to make today to transform your destiny? Breaking the illusion of luck. Clara, like many of us, lived trapped in the idea that a stroke of luck could change her destiny. She fantasized about winning the lottery, about someone influential discovering her one day, or about the perfect opportunity somehow mysteriously appearing effortlessly. But the reality is overwhelming. Less than 1% of people who hope for change through luck achieve real financial breakthroughs. And those who do often lose them within a few years. In fact, studies show that 70% of people who win the lottery go bankrupt in less than 5 years. Why? Because they didn't change their mindset or their habits. True transformation doesn't begin with chance, but with action. Clara realized something powerful. Her luck was built through every daily decision. Every time she chose to read a book instead of spending hours in front of the television, she was investing in her future. Every time she decided to save a portion of her salary instead of spending it on something unnecessary, she was buying freedom. Every time she accepted a challenge, even if she felt afraid, she was opening paths that didn't exist before. The mistake many make is to wait for life to change without lifting a finger, as if a miraculous rescue were available. But the truth is that life transforms when you decide to move a single piece on the board. It doesn't matter if the move is small: reading a chapter, taking a free course, starting a symbolic savings plan. These gestures, repeated with discipline, end up being much more powerful than an unexpected prize. Clara understood that luck is the sum of preparation and opportunity, and that if you don't prepare, even if an opportunity appears, you won't be able to take advantage of it. That was the first commitment she made on her path to prosperity. Making peace with sacrifice. One of the most uncomfortable truths Clara had to accept is that comfort is expensive, and it's often a luxury you have to temporarily give up if you want to build something big. In her first years of change, she worked at a job she wasn't passionate about, but she decided on something radical: to set aside 30% of her salary for savings. According to financial surveys, most people don't even manage to save 10%. And even worse, 60% live paycheck to paycheck, without an emergency cushion to support them. Clara knew that if she continued down this same path, she would be doomed to repeat the cycle of debt and scarcity. So she did the opposite. Every coin she saved was a building block for her future freedom. That money wasn't just money. It was time, peace of mind, and security. If someone saves $200 a month and invests it at an 8% annual return, they can accumulate more than $36,000 in 10 years. That amount, for someone starting from scratch, is the difference between being stuck in a dead-end job or having enough capital to start their own business. The sacrifice wasn't easy. While her friends went out to dinner every weekend, Clara cooked at home. While others changed their cell phones every year, she kept using the same one. While some bragged about vacations, she invested in courses. But she understood that these temporary sacrifices were the seeds of her future independence. Because money spent on immediate pleasure disappears, but money saved and invested multiplies and begins to work for you. And that, sooner sooner or later breaks the chains of poverty. If you feel this message is for you, write in the comments, "Nothing stops me, everything drives me." Because that is the mindset that opens the doors to abundance. The power of invisible education. For a long time, Clara believed that education ended the day she left school. She had a diploma on her wall, but she lived trapped in debt and limitations. It was then that she understood that what truly transforms your life isn't the formal education that ends with a degree, but the invisible education, the kind that no one requires of you, but that changes everything. While many spent their nights watching television or spending hours on social media, Clara began reading books on personal finance, personal development, and biographies of entrepreneurs who had started from nothing. She discovered that 85% of millionaires read at least 2 books a month, and not just any books. They read about leadership, investing, psychology, and self-improvement. What school never taught her about how money works, she learned in a book by Robert Kiyosaki. What she never heard about how to multiply income, she found in an online digital marketing course. And what no one explained to her about the power of habits, she discovered in an audiobook while traveling on public transportation. Invisible education isn't immediately noticeable because it's not a diploma hanging on the wall or public applause. It's more silent. It's in how you begin to think differently, how you begin to make better decisions, how you learn to detect opportunities that others don't. If you spend an hour a day studying finance, in a year you'll have a cumulative 365-hour advantage over someone who doesn't. That's equivalent to more than 45 full workdays of extra knowledge. And in an economy that changes so rapidly, that difference can be the gap between scarcity and abundance. Clara discovered that true wealth doesn't begin in your pocket, but in your mind. Because when your mind expands with new information, it never returns to its previous size. The price of leaving friends behind. The second major challenge on Clara's journey was much more painful than giving up television or saving money. She had to leave behind some close people. She discovered that many of her friends spent hours complaining about the government, her boss, the economy, and the country. These conversations seemed harmless, but were actually invisible chains that kept her trapped in the same place. Studies in social behavior show that your income tends to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you surround yourself with those who only complain and do nothing to improve, you will inevitably end up repeating that pattern. It was tough. Clara had to hear criticism, feel the distance, and endure the discomfort of moving away from people with whom she shared years of her life. But she understood something vital. You can't fly high if you insist on walking with those who don't want to get off the ground. So she sought to surround herself with a new circle: entrepreneurs, dreamers, people who talked about goals, not complaints, about projects, not excuses. In that environment, her ideas stopped sounding crazy and began to seem possible. A powerful metaphor accompanied her throughout this process. A fish will never know it can grow bigger until it's taken out of a small fishbowl and taken to the ocean. And Clara decided to leave her fishbowl and take the plunge. Invest before spending. When Clara began to improve her income, the temptation was immediate. Designer clothes, a state-of-the-art cell phone, short trips that on social media seemed like a reward for hard work. But she took a different path. Before thinking about spending, she chose to invest. Most people make the mistake of spending first, and if there's anything left, saving or investing. But the formula for prosperity is the opposite. You invest first, then cover the essentials, and only at the end, if there's anything left, do you enjoy immediate consumption. Clara decided to set aside a fixed percentage of her income as soon as she received it. Part of that money went to a small digital business that didn't generate profits immediately, but over time became a steady source of income, and another part went into a simple investment fund. If you invest $100 a month in a fund that yields 10% annually, in 20 years you'll accumulate more than $60,000.
But if instead of investing, you spend that same $100 on dinners or clothes, at the end of those 20 years, you'll have nothing except memories and fleeting photos. That difference is abysmal because money spent dies the moment it's handed over, but money invested silently multiplies, even while you sleep. Clara understood that every impulse purchase was a renunciation of her future. That's why she chose to prioritize the invisible, small but consistent investments. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a month, but underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years of consistency. Investing before spending isn't easy because it requires giving up immediate pleasure. But that's where the difference between those who remain trapped in the cycle of consumption and those who manage to build real wealth lies.
Time discipline. If money is a limited resource, time is even more so. We all have exactly 24 hours a day, not one more, not one less. The difference lies in how we use them. Clara understood that it wasn't a lack of time that was keeping her stuck, but a lack of priorities. She decided to get up an hour earlier to study financial topics and invest part of her weekends in building side projects. Studies show that the average person spends between 2 and 3 hours a day in front of the television or using social media. That's equivalent to around 1,000 hours a year. Imagine what redirecting that same time means. In 1,000 hours, you could read 50 books, launch a digital business, or acquire a skill so in demand that it completely changes your income. Time discipline isn't about living like a robot, but about using your time consciously. Clara planned blocks of study, blocks of work, and also blocks of rest. She learned that resting strategically isn't wasting time, but rather recharging energy to move forward with greater clarity. Time is like a bank account. Every morning you wake up with 24 hours deposited. You can't save or borrow, you can only spend them. The question is, what are you investing them in? Clara chose to invest her time in activities that gave her a return: learning, projects, networking, and health. Because she understood something key. Your life in 5 years will be a reflection of how you are using your 24 hours today. If this resonates with you, write in the comments, "I am prosperous and I attract wealth." Because by affirming this, you are not only declaring financial abundance, you are also declaring an abundance of time well spent. Learning from small failures. Clara discovered that each failure wasn't a barrier, but a stepping stone. Every time a business didn't work out, she didn't see it as a definitive defeat, but as training for the next step. The mistake many people make is that they fear failure so much that they don't even try. But here's the paradox. Failure is inevitable. The only thing that changes is when you face it and how you take advantage of it. Clara tried online sales, a craft project, and even ventured into a consulting service that barely yielded any clients. None of those businesses made her rich, but each attempt gave her something more valuable than money: experience. A Harvard Business School study shows that entrepreneurs who have failed at least once are 20% more likely to succeed on their second attempt compared to those who have never tried. This happens because each setback sharpens instinct, develops skills, and strengthens resilience. Clara began to think of failure like a gymnasium. Each mistake was like lifting a heavier weight. It hurts in the moment, but it makes you stronger. And while others kept waiting for the perfect moment to act, she accumulated small victories hidden in the midst of big setbacks. Eventually, she realized the question wasn't "what if I fail?" but "what will I learn when I fail?" That mindset made her impossible to stop. Controlling emotions around money. One of the greatest enemies of prosperity isn't a lack of income, but rather the emotional relationship we have with money. In her early years, Clara realized she spent mindlessly whenever she was sad, anxious, or simply bored. Buying something new gave her a sense of temporary relief. But that relief lasted minutes, while the debt and guilt lasted for months. And she wasn't alone. Studies in financial psychology reveal that more than 40% of unplanned purchases are the result of emotional states, not real needs. This is the invisible trap of poverty, using money as an emotional painkiller. Clara made a crucial decision: to stop buying with emotions and start spending with foresight. Every time she wanted to buy something, she asked herself 2 questions. 1. Is this bringing me closer to my financial goals or further away from them? 2. Am I buying out of necessity or emotion? Over time, she understood that money shouldn't be an escape valve, but a strategic ally. Instead of filling voids with spending, she filled them with projects, learning, and meaningful relationships. Money is like a knife. In inexperienced hands, it can hurt you, but in conscious hands, it can feed an entire family. The difference isn't in the object, but in how you use it. When Clara began to master her emotions around money, she stopped feeling like money controlled her. And that was the door to a stability she had never experienced before. If you're ready to take that step in your life, say, "I accept success, money, and happiness in my life." Because declaring that intention is beginning to train your mind to use money with purpose and not as a temporary refuge. Clara realized a risk that few want to acknowledge. Relying on a single source of income is like walking a tightrope without a safety net. If her job disappeared, if the company went bankrupt, or if a crisis hit the economy, her whole world could come crashing down in a matter of weeks. So she decided to diversify. She kept her main job because it gave her stability. But at the same time, she began to build secondary sources of income. She opened a small digital channel where she shared what she learned, offered independent consulting services, and allocated part of her savings to simple investments. According to the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report, more than 65% of millionaires have at least 3 different sources of income. And it's no coincidence. Diversification means that if one door closes, others remain open. Clara understood something powerful. Money is like a river. If you only have one stream, any drought leaves you without water. But if you build multiple channels, there will always be a flow, even in times of crisis. This mindset allowed him to live with less fear and more vision. The money coming in from various sources gave him not only income, but also the confidence to make more ambitious decisions. Becoming a mentor to others. Clara's final commitment wasn't about accumulating more, but about giving more. When she reached a certain level of stability, she discovered that knowledge that isn't shared eventually rusts. So she began teaching what she had learned to others, family, friends, and later people in her community. This act of sharing not only helped others overcome poverty, but also reinforced her own learning. It's proven that when you teach a topic, your level of understanding increases by up to 90%, because explaining it to others forces you to organize your ideas, simplify them, and apply them better. Clara discovered that wealth isn't just material, it's also social and spiritual. Being a role model for others gave her a greater purpose than any number in a bank account. And the most surprising thing was that, by helping others grow, her opportunities also increased. New projects, partnerships, and learning emerged from that generosity. A torch that shares its fire doesn't lose its light. On the contrary, it multiplies its clarity. Clara became that torch, and she understood that true abundance isn't just about having more, but about being a bridge so others can also move forward. Clara's story isn't a fairy tale. It's living proof that poverty isn't a destiny, but a temporary state. Breaking that cycle requires commitment, sacrifice, and perseverance. If anything you heard today resonated with you, don't ignore it. It may be the sign you've been waiting for. Write it down, manifest it, and start taking action. And remember, wealth doesn't begin in your pocket, it begins in your mind. If this message touched your heart, it's because you're ready for the next step. Subscribe and join me on this path of transformation.